Good morning. Welcome to First Parish Brewster. We are a Unitarian Universalist welcoming congregation of people of diverse philosophies and beliefs, people of various cultures and races, sexual orientations, gender identities, abilities, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your path, may this be a place of rest and restoration on your journey. I'm Reverend Jessica Clay, the minister of this congregation, happy to be welcoming you to the service today with our worship associate, John Kelb. We also extend a special welcome to our guest musician today, David Sutherland, who is a member of this congregation. Our services are recorded and available on our YouTube channel midweek. Just a reminder that we are still doing a speaker outside, so if anybody streaming wants to come and sit outside, it's a little toasty. Oh, there is, hello, Marsha's out there waving through the windows. Let's give Marsha a wave through the windows. So you can come and sit outside and listen to the service as long as weather permits, so that invite is available. We do ask that all over the age of 4 mask while in our buildings. Please silence your cell phones. We also ask that all wear their name tags or fill out the sticker name tags in an effort to be more welcoming. We also welcome the noises, movements, and mirth that little ones bring to our services. Our services are 60 to 75 minutes long. If you need to leave before then, you're welcome to use the doors at the rear of the sanctuary. For those of you who may be first-time visitors this morning or may be returning after a long absence, welcome. Are there any visitors who would like to introduce themselves? Oh, hold on one second. We'll bring you a mic. Give us a sec. Oh, nope, because accessibility. We need a mic. So just hold on one sec. John will come up to you. John didn't know he was getting in his calisthenics today.
My name is Susanna Veazey, and I have recently moved to Yarmouthport, but I've been a long-term member of Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church in Bethesda, Maryland.
Welcome, Suzanne. Thanks so much for being here. Anyone else? Okay, hold on one second, and John will bring the mic back to you. Right in the back, John.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Prego. I live in Brewster. I've passed by your church for 15 years. I've never been inside, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, welcome.
I might want to mention one more thing. There's a great book called Captains of Sea Captains of Cape Cod. It's my book.
Okay.
You can buy it across the street.
Okay. Welcome.
We know some of you, Michelle Bolduc, Corinne Prigent, we've been here, this is our 4th time, I think, and our last time for the summer. So I just wanted to introduce ourselves again because we forgot the name tags.
Oh, thank you. Where are you returning to after this?
France.
France. Okay. Well, safe travels home.
Yeah, we'll be back next year.
Great. We'll see you then. And we have...
I'm Judy Jolett, and I'm sure the minister's going, she's not new. But I just want to ask, how often do people move from Maryland to Yarmouthport? And the answer is at least twice. And if we could talk after the service, that'd be awesome. 3 times?
I moved from Maryland to Brewster.
Okay. Now we're going rogue with the mic. We have one more, John.
Hi, my name is Mary, and I am here. I live in Rochester, Mass., but I'm here visiting Mary Gamerman.
You only make friends with Marys. Perfect. Welcome, Mary. So glad you're here. All of you are invited to join us for coffee hour on the plaza after the service so you can get to know your new friends. And we also want to welcome people who are streaming, so let's give the camera a wave to all of our beloveds who are streaming. So welcome on this morning, which we make sacred by our presence together. We're so glad you are all here. Next Sunday, you're invited to join us for our service on the blessings of abundance. For this service, you're invited to bring any extra abundance from your garden to share with the community, a bit of a garden exchange. And if you don't have a garden or your garden is not producing anything this year, you're still invited to come and take some of the blessings of abundance, because I'm sure other people's gardens are overflowing. There will be more than enough for everyone. So please join us next Sunday at 10 a.m. In community news announcements, I invite you to look at the back of your order of service. We have 2 potlucks coming up. What's a church without potlucks? Well, during COVID, it's still a church. But we're starting to come back to have meals together outside. So note at the top, there's a music in-gathering potluck for all instrumentalist singers and parents of musical children on Wednesday the 31st at 6 p.m. And then below that, on September 10th, an all-church potluck and open mic. And Saturday, September the 10th at 4 p.m. on the Winslow House lawn, which is just around the corner there. We'll provide hot dogs and veggie dogs. Please bring a potluck dish to share. If you cannot bring a dish, but you still want to come, you are more than welcome. This is a time of community building and just nurturing our connections. And as we know, the weather will change fast, so our ability to eat outside together the window is closing, although it doesn't feel like that outside right now. But please do join us for both of those potlucks. Additionally, all ushers and greeters are invited to a beginning of the year orientation on Wednesday, September 7th at 5 p.m. on Zoom. And so welcome to our service today. What is the theme of the service today? Who is this your first question box service? Oh my goodness, are you in for a treat? And who's a veteran of the question box? Who already has a question written? So during this service, I will answer your questions. I will not answer every single question because there's usually not time for that, but I will try to get to as many as possible. So if you have a burning question or questions, feel free to write those down. Our first collection of questions will be during the opening hymn, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. So you have a little bit of time, and there will be 2 more times that we gather questions. So if you don't have anything right now, you might be jogged by something I say in a little bit as an answer to another question, so there will be more opportunities to collect questions. So welcome to the service today. It is so good to be together.
I think questioning attitude ties into our 4th principle as Unitarian Universalists, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. In my work life as an engineer, having questioning attitude was also an important principle. We had a human performance handbook to guide us. Questioning attitude is cited 14 times and contains a list of reasons why a questioning attitude is important. Few of them are challenging preconceived notions and assumptions, consider actions and assumptions from different perspectives, and ensure good decisions are made. The other side to questions, of course, are answers or responses. Later in my career, I often found myself as a person to provide answers to questions. I followed 2 principles. First, welcome the question to encourage a questioning attitude. Second, rather than simply provide an answer, encourage discussion. Background for why and guidance for finding the source possibly uncovers a preconceived notion or assumption. Because it's been done that way before, it doesn't encourage discussion. Another tie-in that comes to mind between my engineering experience and UUism comes from two other principles from that Human Performance Handbook. People are fallible. Even the best people make mistakes. Like I thought I was doing this after the first hymn. People achieve high levels of performance due largely to the encouragement and reinforcement received from leaders, peers, and subordinates. So encouraging questions and having respectful discussions to explore answers, to me, reinforces our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. As we light our chalice today, let us take time to reflect on how asking questions, welcoming those questions, and exploring answers fits into our UU principles and strengthens our relationships.
Everybody's wondering what and where they all come from. Everybody's worrying about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. No one knows for certain, it's all the same to me. I think I'll just let the mystery be. Some say once gone, you're gone forever. Some say you're coming back. Some say you rest in the arms of the Savior if it's sinful ways you lack. Some say they're coming back in a garden full of sweet green peas. Me, I'll just let the mystery be. Everybody's wondering what and where they all come from. Everybody's worrying about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. No one knows for certain, it's all the same to me. I think I'll just let the mystery be. Some say they're going to a place called glory, maybe that's a fact. I've heard I'm on the road to purgatory, I don't like the sounds of that. I believe in love, I live accordingly, and I choose to let the mystery be. I believe in love, I live accordingly, and I choose to let the mystery be.
Thank you, David. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 126, Come Thou Font of Every Blessing. And this is going to be the first question pickup from ushers. Also, if you need a pencil, they will carry around pencils too, so you can let them know. So they'll be walking up and down the aisles if you have a question for them.
lead the affirmation, saying the unitalics words and your responses in the italic. We believe in love. Love is the doctrine of this church. We believe in truth. The quest for truth is its sacrament. We believe in helping others. And service is our prayer. We believe in the sacredness of life. To the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine.
Okay. Let's just do a quick mask check and make sure all of our masks are on and above our noses to help keep everyone safe. And let's take a breath and enter a time of meditation together. I invite you to close your eyes or cast them down. If you have something in your hands, I invite you to set it down. If you notice any noises around you, maybe in your home if you're streaming, or here in the sanctuary or outside, I invite you just to notice them and then let them be. Our meditation this morning is May We Seek the True Questions by Linda M. Hansen. Let us enter into a spirit of meditation. Much of our human struggle is with what we do not know or understand. It is often difficult not to want answers, or even more difficult not to think we have them already. May we experience what we do not know, not as an individual failure, but as an invitation to community. May we seek not the true answers so much as the true questions, knowing that true questions make of our lives meaningful, even if sometimes restless journeys. May we be grateful for the restless voices in our communities. Let us take a few moments of silence to listen for the restless voices within ourselves. May we be good company to one another in our questions and our journey. So may it be. Let's all give John a round of applause for sorting the questions. Okay, the first question is, do you feel closer to the divine, seeing the beauty of nature or human creations of beauty, such as art and cathedrals? Yes. I think that beauty just reminds me of goodness in the world and of hope and joy. So it's sometimes it's about God. Like many of you know, I just took a vacation to Iceland. There are no ugly views in Iceland, I have decided. And so a couple times, especially when I saw a huge rainbow, I said, thanks, God. Do I think that God is really like a puppet master creating this? No, but it reminds me of something outside of myself. And in terms of human-created art, I love artists because their brains work in ways that mine doesn't. And so the ability, even artists like authors who write novels that take me other places that I'm like, how can you even come up with that story, but it was so good? I love things like that, bring me a lot of joy, and they're a balm to my heart. And they connect me to the fact that I don't have all the answers. I don't have to imagine everything. I don't have to create everything, that I can just appreciate. And there's a certain grounding in the moment in that. What I love about staying here is walking down the street and walking to the beach. No matter what time of day, it's always beautiful, as long as you're not getting bitten by green flies, which I don't think are beauties of creation. But it reminds me of the fact that, okay, so I was standing at the foot of this waterfall in Iceland, so many gallons of water coming over, and thinking about how long has water been going over this waterfall, and how long will it continue on long after I'm dust. And that feeling of just being so small and really not that important, I think helps us keep us humble and reminds us that we're all connected and a part of something bigger. And I think it also reminds us to take care of each other. So that was a very rambly answer. But yes? UUs often seem to be in their heads, in quotation marks. How might we invite more mystery, spirit, mystical into our services and gatherings? I think that, let me come up with my answer here. Well, we try to do that in services, so we try, but there are some people who don't want that. So to remember that for every person who does want that, there is someone else who says, I'm not coming to church when so-and-so's preaching because it's too much. So anyone leading worship runs this balance of trying to help people connect to something outside of themselves, but also trying not to push away the people who maybe come from really humanist fellowships, who may come from a lot of a background of church abuse, that anything, if I do a reading from the Hebrew Bible that may get triggered, all those things. So what I try to do in services, you all know what I'm going to say, well, some of you do, is comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. So if you're comfortable, nudge you a little bit towards a little spiritual discomfort to be open to something that you might not have otherwise been open to. And if you're really hurting, to not nudge you too much that you leave and don't come back. But it's really hard. And regularly, well, not sometimes, especially during certain times of the year, I hear people's opinions on it being that there's too much of this or too much of that. And so I think that's why especially when I get guest preachers, I try to bring in people from other backgrounds so that I am not going to speak to everything or keep everyone happy, but trying to bring in different people to meet that wide theological tent which we all gather under. Now, in terms of the latter part of the questions of gatherings, that is on all of you, that if you are leading a committee, there is nothing that would stop you from starting the committee meeting with a chalice lighting and a reading, or a check-in. The problem is that sometimes we really like to talk, and our check-ins can go for a half an hour. And if you're in a group where that time is built in, that's fine, but if you have an hour for a meeting, you're like, how are we gonna get to all the business now? So gentle timers are not the worst things, to allow a little space for that, but also allow you to get business done. But I think making a little space to check in with each other, because we all have very full lives outside of this sanctuary that we bring to our meetings, to our gatherings, and just connecting on a heart level is really important. Also, doing spiritual practices together is super important. Our covenant groups can speak to that, of how are you making space to appreciate the beauty in life, to talk about your own spirituality. The staff will tell you when I meet with them for supervision, I often say, how are your spiritual practices? With no judgment. And when my friends are having hard times and I'm chatting with them on the phone, I'll say, how are your spiritual practices? Because we all need a little reminder. And what that looks like is different to everyone, but connecting, making a little space in your life to ground yourself and connect to something outside of yourself, whatever that is, helps us in everything. Can you talk about the divinity of community? You can tell these are the spiritual questions. Either in history, scripture, or in your own personal experiences. Well, I gave a really good sermon on that. No, I'm serious. My first sermon back from my bereavement leave. And I talked about, I think it was my first one. No, it was the This I Believe sermon, which was a month or so ago, where I talked about, I was on the Camino de Santiago doing this pilgrimage of 500 miles, and I thought that I was going to have this incredible mystical experience and feel God, and where I felt God was in community, was in the people I met, and in those interactions. And so I think that here, there's something really sacred that happens when we all gather. There's something, our staff is so important and helps church to function, but if all of our volunteers didn't do all the work that they did, we would be barely, if not at all, functioning. The Divinity and Community are people who are showing up to do the work of carrying coffee outside, carrying the cookies outside, the people who bring the cookies, the people who are setting up the membership table, all these things. To me, that is these holy, sacred workers who do this work, who often aren't thanked and do not want me to thank them. I know they're right now sitting in their pews going, don't call us out. But that is showing up for all the people who may come here, and that one Sunday they're here, and maybe they come and maybe they're a little hungry, because maybe they're waiting for a paycheck or something like that, and there's a table full of food outside that they can help themselves to. That these little things, or maybe they're just looking for welcome. And so the ushers who are there saying, welcome, do you need help finding a seat? We're so glad you're here. Help make this place sacred and holy. I'm not going to speak to the in history or scripture, but I could give a sermon on that. Okay. How do you heal when someone you loved has been terribly cruel to you? Whew, that's a hard one, because it all depends on what happened, right? So I think that there are differing levels of cruelty, and I would never want to give a blanket response, especially if there was something where abuse or serious harm happened. So I think it's all situation specific. And I think that part of healing is finding safe people to share your story with, so you don't have to carry it alone, and pulling in those people around you, and doing little things each day to nurture yourself, whether it's taking a shower, getting dressed, making yourself a meal. I remember I was in therapy many years ago. I mean, I'm still in therapy, big proponent of therapy. I think that is a big part of healing. But I was in therapy and I was talking about how I had binged a lot of TV, and my therapist was like, how many hours are we talking about? And I was like 2 or 3. And she was like, that's not a lot, right? And I was like, well, it feels like a lot. And she said, the key to taking care of yourself is to do whatever you're doing, but don't make yourself feel bad about it. So part of healing is doing whatever nurtures your heart, but then not feeling guilty about it, like you should be. Our messages of productivity are harmful, and they get in the way of healing. That, like grieving, because so much grief is about healing, they get in the way of everyone has their own time, and it doesn't happen overnight. And we all know, they say time heals all wounds. Well, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we just learn to carry these harms, and we learn how to live with them. And that, but the gift of time is that with time and space, there are moments of meaning and connection and eventually joy that help make their way into those places where the harm has occurred. But some wounds we will carry for our whole lives. Okay. What is your relationship to God, higher power, etc.? How about Jesus? Okay, I'm going to say, how about that, Jesus? I'm going to say my This I Believe service gives this, which is on YouTube, because we have 2 more rounds of questions. So, and I talked a little bit about this with Camino. And in terms of Jesus, I think that for some people, Jesus is really important to their spirituality, and I would never want to discount that. For me, that is not the case, but that doesn't mean that the stories about Jesus in the New Testament, that there can't be meaning found from them. I think, like many biblical stories, there can be meaning found from them, and there are other stories that we can just set aside. But do I think that, I don't believe that everything in the Bible is verbatim truth. But I do believe that there were many people speaking and teaching many wisdom stories that got written down and repeated over the years, and that's what we have today. And that we can still learn something from them. But for some people who Jesus is their number one, I'm so glad that that resonates for you, and I want you to know that there's a place for you here. And with that, how about another hymn? This one is in our teal hymnal, number 1007, There's a River Flowing in My Soul. And I'm going to say, after the first verse, you could probably just go ahead and set down the hymnal because it's a real easy one. Please rise in body or spirit. Also, our ushers are going to collect more questions again during this one.
That I'm somebody.
go ahead and set down your hymnals. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. Mind, a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. Flowing in my soul. Let's do one more time a cappella. Soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. Please be seated. I think we're on round 2, right? Oh no, we're doing the offertory. Sorry. Hello, follow the order of service. Okay, each week we have the practice of splitting our offertory plate. Half of what's collected goes to the work of the church, and half goes to an organization nominated by one of you. Our organization this week is the Cape Cod Climate Change Collaborative. The mission of the Cape Cod Climate Change Collaborative is twofold: reduction in the region's contribution to climate change and protection from its potentially devastating impacts. The collaborative works closely with organizations and businesses on the Cape and Islands, organizing and sponsoring educational events, including the annual Net Zero Conference, now in its 5th year. So there's a couple ways you can give today. You can text to give, the number's in your order of service. You can donate on our website if you're streaming online, or mail a check to the church made out to First Parish Brewster, or you can give in the offering baskets, which are about to be passed around. However you choose to give today, know that your donation is gratefully appreciated. The offering will now be received.
On a sleepy, endless ocean, when the world lay in a dream, there was rhythm in the splash and roll, but not a voice to sing. And the moon shone on the breakers, and the morning warmed the waves. The first single cell on this earth hummed in joy as though to say, this is my home, this is my only home, the only sacred ground that I have ever known. And should I stray into some dark night alone, rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden. And the day grew bright and around her, and the one cell turned to two, and the two into 10,000 things, the old into the new. And on some virgin beachhead, the lonesome critter crawled, and looked about and shouted out in its most astonished drawl, this is my home, this is my only home, the only sacred ground that I have ever known. And should I stray into the dark night alone, rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden. And all the sky was buzzing, and the ground was carpet green. The wary children of the woods went dancing in between. And the people sang rejoicing when their fields were glad with grain, this song of celebration from their cities on the plain. This is our song, this is our only song, the only sacred ground that we have ever known. And should we stray into some dark place alone, rock us, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden. Now there's smoke across the harbor, and there's factories on the shore. The world is ill with greed and will and enterprise of a war. But I will lay my burdens in the cradle of your grace, the shining beaches of your love, the sea of your embrace. This is my home, this is my only home, the only sacred ground that I have ever known. And when I stray into some dark place alone, rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden.
Okay. We have some hard hitters in this one. Are we going to have another potato festival? I don't know. Because I'm not the one who did it. So I think that would be, a lot of these questions, I'm going to come back to this, is all dependent on all of you. So I think, for certain things that you want to do, it's all dependent on volunteers leading things. And oftentimes there will be a couple of really dedicated volunteers, but it's a lot. And then trying to get people to continue to do it is the hard thing. But that was a fun thing. Okay, who makes the final decisions as to which hymns will be sung? That is a conversation between myself, Twinks Hastings, our director of lifespan faith formation, close, and our music director, Kevin Bananas. So we have worship meetings where we decide what hymns are sung, and we try to pick ones that haven't been sung recently. But if it is a lay-led service, then they will usually choose the hymns in consultation with Kevin. And if it is a guest preacher, they will do the same. Some congregations do for their auction. They do, you can bid to have a hymn not be sung for a year. Very fascinating. I think we did do one year, we did do pick hymns for a service. So that was fun. Okay, the next question. Will the Gala Ball return, or do you think that it's something that is out of style now? Did that hit some nerves? So I know that the date is held for next year. I think as to whether it's returning, it is all dependent on COVID and to whether people feel safe. A big part of the Gala Ball was having a meal together at first. And there are some people in this congregation who are eating indoors, and there are some who are not. And so I think that the Welcoming Congregation Committee is having these conversations because it's a lot to put on, and they want to do it. If normally there's around at least 100 tickets sold, and so if you're only going to get 30 or so people, it doesn't make sense to put it on. As to whether something is out of style now, I think that this is a treasured thing for this community. I think there will become a point when people say, okay, it's lived its lifespan. I don't know that has happened because there wasn't really like an ending. It got a sudden ending because of COVID, like so many things. And so I think it would be nice to revisit it. And it may become something that happens every 5 years or something, because it takes so many people to put it on. But I think that is up for this congregation to determine. And this community, because really it's not just about this congregation, it's about the community who attends. So I think you will know when you put it on and see how many people come. And if you're consistently getting the same numbers year after year, then that tells you that it is very much still hip. If money and staffing was unlimited, what one change would you make to A, buildings, B, program would you add, C, staff would you add? One change? Come on now, people. If money, staffing, to buildings, I would put in an elevator and fix the kitchen, because I'm answering this question, so I'm going to say 2 changes. So I would put in an elevator because there are some people who don't come to church on Sunday because walking up that hill is too much for them. And so if we could make it so that people could come in through Fellowship Hall and come upstairs, we would be more accessible. I think we're accessible because most of our people are fairly able-bodied, but then when they aren't, they stop coming. And there's a reason for that. And having a fully functioning kitchen that we can all share meals together. I know we're not eating inside right now, but at some point we will be, and that would be really nice for us and the community. Oh, program would you add? I don't know about that. I think what program would you add? I think I would probably add more staff to our CYM program, because trying to find volunteers for that is incredibly difficult. And right now with one service, whoever volunteers for it during Sunday mornings has to miss church. So I would hire some staff to help support that program. And then C, staff would you add? I would hire an office assistant. We have wonderful co-volunteers who are doing the work of a paid person, which is fantastic right now, but I think long-term we need more staffing in the office specifically. Okay, will we be returning to 2 services on Sunday? If not, can we move the single service to 9? Controversial. Okay, so we will be returning to 2 services when we are consistently more than 80% full. For people who weren't here before, we used to be 2 services before the pandemic, September to May. And we went to 2 services after my first year where we looked at the numbers and we were consistently more than 80% full. The statistics say if you are more than 80% full, newcomers come in, they can't find a seat, they will turn around and leave. But until then, it just doesn't make sense to return to 2 services, especially because it would mean that the 11 o'clock service would be pretty empty, which is hard for whoever's leading worship. Can we move the single service to 9? You know what? The 10 o'clock time is hard for some people. I have some people who won't come because they preferred the 11. So for people who aren't morning people, I think it's really hard. So I'm going to say we're staying at 10 until, if we get to the point where we're ready to move back to 2. But I think, we're learning to live with COVID. We don't know what that'll look like. And so this is just something that we just have to keep being curious about. And we consistently have 20 people streaming in every Sunday. And so I think that one of my hopes for services is that we have a way to interact with the people who are streaming in, because those are people who are missing out on this community of being here in person. And so that is a big goal for me of services, and continuing to help people feel a part of this community if they don't feel safe attending. And in that line, will masks ever be optional in church? You know, does anyone have a magic 8-ball handy? I don't know. I would say maybe at some point, but anytime soon, I don't see it happening. Because how many people wouldn't come if we made masks optional? Do you feel comfortable raising your hands? Right. So this is about welcome. And we wear masks because some of us are eating in restaurants, we're totally comfortable, but other people are still frustrated. They don't feel like they can travel anymore because of not wearing masks on airplanes. So we wear masks for the people who need us to wear masks. And your COVID task force is still meeting monthly. I think all the people who signed up for it had no idea how long they would be on this committee. And we're basically reassessing every month. And right now we're talking about at what point will we have food for coffee hour inside. That feels like next step as opposed to making masks optional. So, is it possible to have more symbols up on the wall, like humanist, pagan, atheist symbol? I do believe one of these is the wheel. I think it's for Taoism and for humanism, I believe. But I think an important question about symbols, which I could give a whole sermon on, is why do we want them up there? For what purpose? What purpose do they serve? And are we putting them up there to make ourselves feel better? Or are we putting them up there because we really go deeply into whatever that background is a question. Okay, I'm going to have to quickly go through these. Does First Parish Brewster still want to support our partner church in Romania? That is a question that is entirely up to all of you. And the Partner Church Council is going through a whole revisioning process. I'm excited to hear about what they come up with, because for a long time the relationship has been a lot of us sending money, and not just us, every other congregation sending money. And so I think there will be more information about this in the year to come, but it also takes a group of congregants like you all to keep that going. Yesterday I listened to your congregation's superb ukulele choir, the Euclectics. I don't think that's our choir, but there are people here in it, at the Cotuit Center for the Arts. Would you ever consider having them lead the music in this service? Sure. I love the music at First Parish Brewster. When will our FPB orchestra be back playing in our sanctuary? Part of the problem is we still have a no wind instrument rule in the sanctuary. So your COVID task force actually has research articles on that. Thanks, Marie. That we are reviewing this week. So we are revisiting that, but I know that they are missed. Okay. We still have one more group of questions. Is our Social Action Committee doing anything to help strengthen our democracy in our country within our First Parish Brewster community? That's a great question for them. And do any of the attendees of the UU General Assembly report back to the members about issues and controversies within national, global UU? Normally we have a service in the summer, a GA Sunday service. We didn't have it this year because we had two congregants go, 2 or 3. It was three. Yeah, it was a really small number of congregants who went to GA, but who knows where GA is next year? Pittsburgh. So that means it's right down the street, basically. So if we could get a large group to go, that would be really great, and then they could do a summer service to report back on it. But if you are interested in talking to people about what happened at GA, can those who went to GA raise your hands? You can go find some of these people after service. I also went, as I do every year. So, okay, I think we have one more musical offering from David. And then one last gathering of questions. I can't promise I'll get to them because we're running out of time, but I do keep these, and I keep them in mind for future services, just an FYI. So ushers, if you could do one more collecting, please.
I would love your help on the chorus to this one, and it's pretty easy. Gently, lightly, I hold this light. Gently, lightly. Let's try saying it. Gently, lightly, I hold this light. Gently, lightly. And you'll get a cue because right before that, I sing the words gently, lightly. So that'll be your cue to watch for my head nod that you come in. So let's try it to music here. Gently, lightly, I hold this light. Gently, lightly. Gently, lightly, I hold this light. Gently, lightly. There's harmony parts to it you can figure out. I stood at the edge of the world as sun-dappled waves unfurled. I learned from the sea how to hold this light gently, lightly. Gently, lightly, I hold this light gently, lightly. All of the forces that live on this earth meet at the edge of the ocean, brilliant, bursting, held in such light, gently, lightly. Gently, lightly, I hold this light, gently, lightly. And it says love exists in as many ways as there are angles of sun on the ocean. All of the voices that never resolve, the ebb and the flow of their calling, held for one moment, held in this light, gently, lightly. Gently, lightly, I hold this light, gently, lightly. And it says love exists in as many ways as there are angles of sun on the ocean. All of the forces that never resolve, the forces that hold them forever. I learned from the sea how to hold this life gently, lightly. Gently, lightly, I hold this light gently, lightly. And it says love exists in as many ways as there are angles of the sun on the ocean. Love exists in as many ways as there are angles of sun on the ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, last round of questions. I'm not getting to everyone's questions. Apologies in advance for that. And I answered the social justice question a little quickly. If you have questions about what committees and things are up to, I really want to empower you to go to our website, and you can find who the current chairs of committees are and contact them and ask them. Because I try to attend most committees at least once a year, but I was on leave and then I came back and it's the summer. Most committees take a break over the summer, so I don't have my finger on the pulse of every committee at this moment. But I encourage you to reach out and find out what committees are up to. But I do want to talk about helping democracy in this country is our UU the Vote group, which is doing letter writing to get out the vote in November, which is super important. So if they're interested in that, Tavia, can you raise your hand? Tavia is one of the co-chairs of it. Who's the other co-chair? Sorry. Catherine Farnham. And Carol Deanna. But Tavia is here today, so you can talk to her about how to get involved in that.
We're getting close to 3,000 letters.
She's saying they're getting close to 3,000 letters.
We'd like to go beyond, so keep checking the box.
And they'd like to go beyond. So you can get the letters at the barn, which is just around the corner at our offices. Since by all reports, housing diversity, housing affordability, and housing access are the most significant problems on Cape Cod right now, what are we as a spiritual and social justice community doing to find solutions? Housing, housing, housing. I think that this question, and there was another question about diversity and building multicultural community, I think these lead to what are we here for? Because we can't fix every problem, right? But we can say, this is what we want to focus on this year. So in years past, we have sponsored Habitat for Humanity houses. In years past, we have done all-church anti-racism curriculums. So there are a lot of social justice needs within the world, within our community, and that this congregation gets to really sit with, well, what do we want to focus around? Each year, they get to ask that question. What do we want to focus around? Because in years past, there have been a lot of people working on a lot of things, but it means it's all spread out, and you don't have a lot of energy behind one thing. And so what we've really tried to do is to get energy behind big things like reparations, the eighth principle. And so because we passed the eighth principle over a year ago, my question would be, like, what is your committee doing around the eighth principle? Because we have we don't just pass it and feel good about ourselves, we have an accountability to it. And that is a principle towards anti-racism work. Okay, how do we best prepare for economic shortfalls before they happen? We have this beautiful thing called an endowment. Shout out to the endowment. Our endowment, you know, when the pandemic happened and we thought we were gonna have a huge shortfall, you all voted that we could draw from the endowment. That endowment is a safety net for us that a lot of congregations don't have. Does that mean we just sit back and we're good? No, but it does mean that there are a lot of congregations that have to face a lot more serious questions because they don't have that. So I just want to give a shout out to everyone who's ever given to it and to all of our ancestors in this place who gave to it so that we could have that underneath our feet. But in terms of preparing, there are many things. The stewardship consultant who was here a couple months ago talked about doing a long-term financial plan. I think that this is a question that your finance committee and your board is really sitting with and trying to, and is really focusing on this year, is the financial health of this congregation. There's a couple questions on why I went into the ministry. That's a really long answer. And there's a sermon on that. Cliff Notes, who remembers Cliff Notes? Thank you. Back before the internet. Cliff Notes of, I was an occupational therapist and I was really unhappy and I had a lot of therapy, psychoanalysis, I got sober. I saw a career intuitive, otherwise known as a job psychic, and I had a flash of inspiration watching the documentary, oh my gosh, now I'm going to blank on it, about Gene Robinson, who was the first openly gay Anglican bishop, and the credits rolled, and I turned to my friend and said, I'm going into ministry. So that's your real Cliff Notes, but there's a lot more there. Okay, when we are facing major life decisions, do you have suggestions on how to do this? Yes, and the Quakers have this wonderful process called a Clearness Committee, which when I have been facing difficult life decisions, I have reached out to friends and colleagues who've helped me do this. And it's basically a group, a trusted group of people who can just ask you questions. You can say, this is the decision I'm sitting with, and they can just ask you gentle questions, reiterate what you're saying. They're not supposed to offer solutions, and there are people trained to do this, so I recommend finding someone trained to do it. But really help you to sort of look at it from all aspects to get clear on which way to move forward. I love that our UU faith is a faith of questions, not answers. That said, we all want answers. How can we reconcile this dilemma, especially in a world often filled with crises of faith, doubt, and mistrust? Pema Chodron has this beautiful book about embracing uncertainty that I read every couple of years. And I never get all the way through it because I get just what I need, and then I pick it up again a few years later. And I think life is about embracing uncertainty. And during my last 5 years of ministry here, there have been many things that happened where everybody didn't have all of the story because personnel things happened, because of confidentiality, and that we had to sit in the questions and not try to jump to conclusions and go towards trust of our leaders, go towards trust of me, and some people didn't. And for some people, they want all the answers, and it's really hard in a world that is so uncertain. We don't know what the future of the pandemic is going to look like. Our national politics don't look good. And so I think, for the one place we want to feel stable and secure is our church sanctuary. And when things aren't answered, that's the really hard time to say, do I still say yes to this community amidst all that uncertainty? So for those who are still saying yes, thank you. What do you consider the foremost calling of the Unitarian faith? Is it social justice or something else? I am going to end shortly. I think the foremost calling of the Unitarian faith is that we are all independent beings, right? And we can go it alone, but we don't need to go it alone. That it is better to go forth in community, that it is better to live in this world with the ways it will break your heart and the ways it will mend it together in community. And it's really hard. And that we have a responsibility to come together, to treat each other with care, and to help turn that arc of the world towards justice, even if it's not going to happen in our lifetime. How do you know, or how do you make sure that your actions are in harmony with your values? I know because I usually get a feeling in my gut when I am not in harmony with my values. And I know that I was a little bit snappy there, I have an apology to send or something like that. But spiritual practices help me to be less reactive. I have a meditation retreat booked at the end of September, the first one since pre-pandemic. That's what helps me to, when I'm reactive, I'm not centered in my values. And so that is what helps ground me. And my spiritual practices have pretty much gone out the window since the pandemic. So yes, I ask all the staff, but it's not like I'm like some perfect student at it either. We're all working together. Twinks is looking at me like, oh, really? Okay. Is there room for forgiveness? Is it a spiritual practice? This is another one where I think it's all in the situation. I would never tell someone that they have to forgive or that everybody has to forgive because it's all situation specific. And there's a really good book on forgiveness called The Sunflower that if you have questions about forgiveness, I invite you to read, that is very powerful. But I think it all depends on spiritual. I think it all depends on the situation. But you all know, at a certain point in your life, you sort of have to say, how much am I still carrying, and when's it time to let it go? And for some, nope, I'm going to carry this till the end, and for others, it's time to let it go. I answered that way. Is there a way to discuss current politically sensitive issues relative to our principles from the pulpit? Yes, and I try to do that. I try. How can we support you? This question comes up every single time I do question box services. Bless your hearts. You're so sweet. I will say the same thing that I said. Trying to remember. I feel like I might have said it right before or during when I was in the hospital about to deliver Penelope, or I may have said it afterwards, I can't remember, but how you can support me is by taking good care of each other, by moving with care for each other, by supporting your church leadership, that the bonds of this community are not entirely dependent on me, they are dependent on we. And so the ways that we can support each other and show up for each other, show up for our kids, show up for our leadership, show up in ways that matter and that deepen your connection here, helps support my ministry as well, because we are all responsible for the ministries of this congregation, and it's only as good as all of the effort that each of us puts in. And if you're depleted right now and you're like, I've got nothing, know that the person next to you might be overflowing and they might be just looking for a place to send it. So it's not that everybody has to put in the same amount all the time, but to move with care towards each other, because as I preached about a few weeks ago, everybody's a little crispy right now. And so if we can just move with deep care towards each other, I think that will make a difference in people's lives. And I think never underestimate your power to make a difference in someone's lives. Your acts of kindness, your checking in with people, your calling people to say, hey, do you want to go for a walk? Like, loneliness is real, even if someone's partnered. So remember that Facebook or Instagram or whatever, our 1 hour interaction on Sunday morning doesn't give the whole picture of a person. So check in on the people you love and take time to build new connections. We've had so many new people join that are also hungry for connection as well. So with that, we will open our gray hymnal to sing our closing hymn, number 205, Amazing Grace. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. Okay, just because I love it, let's sing that last verse a cappella after you put all your hymnals away. 205, last verse. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, with no less days to sing God's praise, and when we first begun. I just love the feeling of singing a cappella with all of you. I hope you enjoyed our question box service. Go ahead and turn and face each other. It was a service with a lot of Reverend Jessica, but I want you all to know that your questions matter, even if I didn't get to them. Thank you for sharing them. Thank you for showing up for each other this Sunday. May you return again and again and know this place as your home. Amen, and please join us on the plaza for coffee hour.
As a member of the board, that's important for me.
Doing this is so great. I mean, this is really great. And you divided the categories of kind of having your head work.
I stuck with my old engineering principle, even the best people make mistakes.
Right.
Didn't make it?
Well, you couldn't perfectly get them in for full.
Well, there weren't many, but there were